So I really liked a quote from Mark Shapiro, and that quote is no one goes to Six Flags to ride carnival rides. And obviously, the current administration thinks a little bit differently because they keep throwing these things up. And any argument you guys have that this thing is a coaster, you are the sole person on earth that believes that no one considers this a coaster. The park certainly doesn't, obviously. They only call it a coaster so that when they throw it on the commercials, people are like, oh, new roller coaster. And then they show up and they're like, oh, I rode this in 1965 at the local fair. Pretty innovative, huh? And so I kind of got the argument with the older versions of these things, like it's a roller coaster, like there's a little bit of gravity involved, like you got to rock it back and forth to get it up. But this thing, definitely not. It's got this counterweight up at the top right here. And so literally all these motors do is just rotate this circle. So you can, if we look at the panel here, you can literally, it might not be on the screen. Let's look at this one. Yeah, you can click this invert mode button right here, and it'll go and park at the top. That's not a roller coaster. Like, I even try to make a list. Reasons it's a coaster, I can't think of anything. Gravity's not involved. The movement depends entirely on the speed of the drive tires. Doesn't roll. Definitely don't coast. Not considered a coaster internally. It's been considered a flat ride since its inception. I mean, this ride was in Sandlot. How old is that movie? Forever ago. These things have been around forever. So it's so bold of Six Flags to call these things coasters because they are literally pointing in the face of their customers and saying, "Yeah, you're getting a coaster. It's a fireball." So let's look at this coaster and not. Whew, what did I just say? Let's look at this carnival ride. I hated this thing. This might be the worst ride in the entire park to work at. It's extremely loud, extremely hot. I mean, it's a carnival ride, so the stairs are metal. So you're just baking up there in the sun. Checking restraints is major pain. It's just there's no fun part about it. Terrible. I hated working there. And I was actually really disappointed because I was excited that IOE was coming to do a panel finally. I wish they had done Goliath. Probably would have worked out much better. But I was disappointed because this ride still went down a ton for stupid little things. And it was so there's these proc switches. They can tell where the train, I guess you call it, where it's at. And so if it parks, too far to the left, too far to the right, it causes an error. Maintenance has to come out, flip a switch, and move it an inch. Which, if I owned the park, I would just let the operators do it themselves so that people don't have to get stopped on the ride for 15 minutes every half hour. At least that's how it was back when I worked there, when it was new. But let's take a look up my panel review. This 2 out of 10. It gets extra bonus points for the little graphic, but in how it looks, I just hate the ride so much it's hard to give the panel a good review. Power on off, self-explanatory ride lights. I'll put $100 with anyone. Half of these lights will be broken within 3 years because they're probably expensive, so they probably will never replace them when they go bad. So this is going to look awful in about 3 years. Putting money on it right now. But if we go back to the panel, ride mode, manual, automatic. So in the manual mode, you could use these buttons right here to jog it left or jog it right, and all that would do is just move. It would either rotate the drive motors to the left or rotate them to the right to move the circle around. I can't remember what we called the circle. For some reason I'm thinking girth ring, but that's definitely not it. It was some sort of ring or loop or something that they called it. But if we go to the stops, cycle stop, I'm pretty sure, I don't remember for sure, but I'm pretty sure when you pressed that, it would just come to a stop down at the bottom. You could pull it out and start the ride again. E-stop, self-explanatory, cuts part of the ride, so wherever the car is probably where it will stay. So if you pressed it while it was upside down, it definitely would be stopped upside down until someone came and powered it back on. Ride start, it's just if there's an e-stop or something, you e-stop, reset, ride start, there you go. You're back in business. Acknowledge. We know that. This ready to operate switch, so for whatever reason, I think it's because it's like, oh, it's a coaster. We have to have an operator stationed at this panel where they literally press 1, 2 buttons every 10 minutes. We're not going to have them check restraints or anything. So I think if you were going to have an operator not stand at the panel, you turn this on and off. Every time they didn't use it, they just left in the on position. Restraint, that's how you open, locked and unlocked the restraints. And I mean, this is a carnival ride. The other ones, the older ones that Six Flags installed, you had to like plug in. I've seen it at Six Flags America. You had to plug in the air compressor line and then the electricity line every time that the train stopped. Luckily, this one was the first fully automated one. The other ones have joysticks. This one was all automated, same program every time. Operators have absolutely no control over the ride cycle. It's going to do the same thing every time. And you just start it with the cycle start. And then on the other side of the station, you can't see it, but the person over here has a panel too that they push the enable button. And then exit gates, locked, unlocked. I think you can figure that out. There was an exit gate with a magnet, which, whew, big spending for this ride, big spending. Goliath, Goliath, you know, we're building the world's tallest, fastest, steepest wooden roller coaster. That can't have a magnetic locking gate. But Hangover, oh, let's give that thing magnetic entrance and exit gates. Because we can spare no expense with Hangover, but Goliath, we need to cut the budget. Too expensive. Too expensive. I like this right here. And they literally put this thing up in a day. I remember seeing it. It was like, came in earlier in the day and there was nothing there, and I look over later, I'm like, oh, they built it. They must have had the Lake County Fair people come over and help out. These are the motors, or this is the gearbox or whatever, and here's the brakes. Here's the gearbox, or whatever you call this, the stats. Made in Mexico. And interesting little trivia fact here. So this is the first ride that Larson built at Six Flags Great America, but they actually also did the transfer track for Goliath. The elevator transfer track was done by Larson. But I mean, yeah, this little tiny screen, you could, in manual mode, you could do things like jog it low, medium, or high, put it upside down, or park it for the night. And I remember when we first built this, it rained one night, and all the cars were soaked, and there were some electronic components on there that were destroyed. And apparently they were supposed to be parking it upside down at night, but according to them, no one told them. I don't know if no one told them or if they just weren't paying attention. Here's the air compressor for the entire ride. Definitely not a carnival ride, right? Definitely not a carnival ride. Carnival ride to replace another carnival ride. At least this one they bolted to the ground, unlike King Chaos that was just sitting on wooden blocks. And then here's the Wonder Woman panel for if you're interested. Six Flags Fiesta Texas, the RMC single rail coaster. But yeah, there's not a lot of talk about this ride. God, I hated this thing. I knew my days were coming to an end at Six Flags when they installed this thing, and it's like, you know, when I say Max Force is a terrible ride, you have to remember, like, that's your big ride. That's your big ride. You're not getting another coaster for a couple years. And, you know, if it were me, instead of building Hangover and next year, you know, that giant swing Discovery whatever that they're going to build, why don't you just, you know, put $500,000, $1 million into sprucing the place up a little bit every couple years, and you know what? Then you can use that money that you saved to Add a couple thousand extra feet to your track, make it 3 trains instead of 2. A little more efficient than 600 riders an hour. That's just what I think. I mean, what a terrible ride this was. I rode this and I was like, God, this is awful. What an embarrassment. And the thing I hated the most was this thing had terrible capacity. I thought Goliath was going to be the worst capacity ride we would ever add. But no, this one was so much worse. Oh my God, it can get like 200 riders an hour. It's terrible. Everything's terrible about this ride. There's nothing good to say. Definitely not a coaster. No one thinks that it is. If you do, you're delusional. It's literally a giant connected ring that's pushed by 4 motors. That's not a roller coaster. Not a roller coaster. That's the dictionary definition. Steep inclines, plunges, curves. Yeah, none of that. None of that. If you surveyed 10,000 people, maybe one of them would call it a roller coaster, and they don't know what they're talking about. But no, it's not a coaster. Even at Great America, it was such a joke. Oh yeah, our new coaster. Yeah, no. And like we didn't even train people like this was a coaster. You had to. It was on a different checklist, different training checklist than the coasters. So no one considers this thing a coaster. I think it's the worst ride that Great America's ever put in, even worse than Condor. And I can't wait to take this place over and burn it to the ground. This ride, I mean, not the rest of it. Just these past couple rides they've been adding. Let's take those out. Put some a little bit better in there. I feel like the people of Gurney deserve better. That's what I think. Hope you learned something. Catch you in the next one.